Good morning. A deserved nod, first of all, to Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of you who are mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and as Simon said, aunties, godmothers, you name it. My fondest memory of my mother was when I was a kid. I would go to sleep every night listening to her play the piano. She was a conservatory-level pianist. She got her degree at Oberlin. And I have become forever spoiled for good music, piano in particular. I have had a special fondness for Chopin, Brahms, and Grieg. It was her legacy to my brother and me. My grandmother read poetry to me when I was a child, and needless to say, I also have a fondness for Robert Frost, among others. Grandma would read poems with zest, making even the dullest ones wonderful, maybe with the exception of A Song of Hiawatha by Longfellow. Poetry was her legacy for us. I still have her leather-bound poetry book my grandpa gave her in the early 40s. He had it specially bound with red leather and had her initials down in the lower corner in bright gold, and she treasured it forever. Ascension Day was this last Thursday. This is the time when Jesus ascended into heaven 40 days after his resurrection. We recite the creed every Sunday, and part of it says, "He ascended into heaven and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father." Along with the meaning of the Trinity, the Immaculate Conception, and the various miracles that Jesus performed, Ascension is one of those events I take on faith. Just like the concept of heaven. As Chesterton said, the riddles of God are more satisfying than the solutions of man. I feel that the words in the Creed about the Ascension are a way of telling us that Jesus was transformed and is next to God. Many of us have felt that God is within us at all times. Maybe the words of the Creed are one way of telling us that Jesus was transformed to be in us, one and the same as God. So perhaps heaven exists inside each of us, depending on how in touch we might be with that inner voice of God. We are transformed when we connect with heaven. Okay, so what is heaven really like for each of us? How do we imagine heaven to be? Where is it that we find peace of mind and the security of being in God's hands? Well, it depends on who you ask. Heaven could be a cardboard box. Back in 1995, I attended a seminar in Eugene and met a man who at one time was homeless in San Francisco for many months. He told his story during the seminar, and I was struck by his gratitude for a cardboard box, especially the rare ones that are double thickness. You've seen them, the produce comes in those. He said they were very hard to come by for street people. But if he could score a box for the night, he knew he would have a decent night's sleep because he would be protected from the weather. For him, that was a piece of heaven. If he slept well, he would be able to have the energy next day to find his next meal and perhaps his next cardboard box. He felt hopeful and transformed when he had a box to call home. His heaven gave him peace of mind for the night. Maybe heaven is an egg and a dry pair of socks. When I was in Seattle in the early 2000s, I helped teach Sunday school for middle school-aged children at the church I attended in Renton. One of our field trips was to the women's shelter in downtown Seattle. It's called Mary's Place during the week, and the Church of Mary Magdalene on Saturdays when they have a church service and a served breakfast. Every Saturday, the shelter would host groups to come help serve breakfast to the women who came in from the cold to rest, to eat, and to attend the service. Another teacher and I took the kids in the church van one Saturday morning. You've been in those vans, those big 15-people vans. Try parking that in Seattle, Washington. We set up the breakfast in the dining area, and on the menu was juice, coffee, sweet rolls, fruit, and lots of scrambled eggs. The director had specified to us lots of scrambled eggs. As we served the women, we noticed they all asked for extra scrambled eggs. The sweet rolls and the fruit were far less popular. It turns out that proteins keep them warmer longer when they are out in the cold. The carbohydrates give a quick surge, but fade fast. They knew that if they had enough of the eggs, they would be able to survive the cold and rain each day a bit better. They had more energy for a longer period of time. The other item was dry socks. A homeless person fares far better in the wet and cold with dry socks. They are transformed when they are well-fed, clean, and dry. The shelter and what it offered them was heaven. Someone loved them and protected them for a time. Part of my heaven is music. Have you ever heard a piece of music so beautiful you dare not breathe? I have, and I could name any number of pieces of music that absolutely send me into my inner heaven. I am transformed by music. For a time, I have connected with something beyond myself. It connects me deeply to the God that is inside me. It is God's voice speaking to me. It is my heaven. What is heaven to us as God's children? Where is it? Are they waiting for us? How do we connect with heaven while we are still alive? It has been said that we each create our own heaven and perhaps also our own hell as we live through the sweetness and hurdles of life. I have been reading a book called Proof of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who was in a deep coma because of a very dangerous bacterial infection in his brain. He had a near-death experience. Even though the book is loaded with medical neurological jargon, which is his language, it was clear that he had experienced an event that was indescribable in either medical terms or human terms. He said as much himself. Here is a doctor who was a scientist about the workings of the human brain, the effects on it by many kinds of outside stimuli. But after he returned from his coma, he did say that human words were simply not adequate for what he went through. If you've had medical issues in your life or you've seen the death of a loved one, I imagine you have considered the afterlife and what heaven is really like. I can tell you that I have. Furthermore, after my diagnosis of cancer a couple of years ago and all that ensued in those treatments, I really wanted to know what would happen after my time on earth. I looked for books on near-death experiences because even though I believe that after my life I'll be fine, I still needed that reassurance from the many who have had that happen to them. Dr. Alexander said he was told many times while on his journey out of the body that he had nothing to fear. We hear that in Scripture now, many times. Be not afraid. Do not be afraid. He also said that the prayers that were lifted up for him by many people really did make a difference on his journey during the coma. He was told while journeying that the prayers were heard and made his travel much more uplifting. This was coming from a man who rarely attended church except on Christmas and Easter, and did not really have a personal belief system that has sustained him before this event. He had once understood the purpose of prayer. He came back with the goal of telling as many people as possible that it really is good out there and that we will be okay. I would like to think that I will live a long life, but when one gets cancer diagnosis or some other serious illness, that diagnosis transforms you. A friend of mine told me that my new life with cancer is a new normal. I am more in touch with my inner heaven now. God is there, not just where Jesus ascended, but inside each person in a place of peace. Our personal heavens are hopeful, and they bring life and peace. Heaven is where God dwells, and no matter what form it takes. Amen.